Men of Reddit, what are some of the pressures that men can go through that maybe the opposite sex might not understand? I'm a single dad, with 100% custody. My ex tried to kill me. No one, people I see daily, asks me if I'm okay, or if I need a day off, or they can do anything for me. I'm just expected to man up. I haven't had a day off in 17 years and I'm exhausted. Single dad as well. Unfortunately my family helps a lot, but I can understand what you are saying. The public in general has no sympathy for single dads. Sometimes they are even hostile. People don't care about deadbeat moms, but deadbeat dads go to freaking jail. It is utterly unfair. Moms should go to jail if dads are. In the middle of the night if there is a spooky noise I have to go check if it's safe. Like WTF, I'm just as scared as you. On a serious level, that is completely true. I still live with my mom and siblings. If a noise happens downstairs, you better your butt they all look at me to check it. In addition to not having the comfort and confidence and cultural support to talk to people about my emotions, I haven't been on a date in a year despite presence on OKC and Tinder and living near a pretty major city, large enough that my Tinder almost never runs out of people when swiping. Plenty of right swipes, plenty of super likes. I have decent pictures. I'm reasonably attractive. I have a pet in a picture, and I have a quirky, but honest profile. No consistent interest. I've had people critique it and look over everything, and the verdict is pretty much always that it looks like a good profile for the kind of person I'd like to date. So I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. But I match someone once or twice a month if I'm lucky, and their response rate or message rate is like 1/10. And like, I even feel guilty complaining about that because while a lot of women get a ton of attention, most of it is horrible, terrifying, and unwelcome. And sure, I hate that I never have a conversation with another person who shares my passions and is interested in me, but it's not like I'm afraid of being murdered or assaulted or harassed. So I try not to say anything, but I get more and more depressed and convinced that I'm unattractive, too awkward for dating, or unlovable. On top of that, because I have to make the first move in every online dating conversation, the expectation is that I manage to be witty, original, charming, and approachable within 40 characters or less among a sea of literal thousands of other guys in the exact same position, but who are probably less introverted and awkward than I am. This is why men cannot afford to show weakness. Women are merciless. Brené Brown did a TED talk on shame. Google it and then go to 1530 in. Here is also a quote from her in a Red Book article on the subject. Men walk this tightrope where any sign of weakness elicits shame, and so they're afraid to make themselves vulnerable for fear of looking weak. But if you can't be vulnerable, then you can't truly grow and be your best self. Women can either embrace and help men walk across the tightrope, or we can be the ones who push them off. Just like Brené Brown states in her video for men, shame is not a bunch of competing, conflicting expectations. Shame is one, do not be perceived as what? Weak. I did not interview men for the first 4 years of my study. It wasn't until a man looked at me after a book signing and said, "I love what say about shame. I'm curious why you didn't mention men." And I said, "I don't study men." And he said, "That's convenient." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you say to reach out, tell our story, be vulnerable. But you see those books you just signed for my wife and my 3 daughters." I said, "Yeah, they'd rather me die on top of my white horse than watch me fall down." When we reach out and be vulnerable, we get the crap beat out of us. And don't tell me it's from the guys and the coaches and the dads, because the women in my life are harder on me than anyone else. So I started interviewing men and asking questions. And what I learned is this: you show me a woman who can actually sit with a man in real vulnerability and fear, I'll show you a woman who's done incredible work. Men are smart. They hear us asking for their vulnerability, but are also very aware that we may act scared or resentful when they show their vulnerable side. You wouldn't believe how often men tell me, "I pretend to be vulnerable, but I keep him under control," or "I give her enough to believe I'm being open because if I were totally truthful about how afraid or out of control I feel, she would judge me." Underneath the pretending lies hurt, disappointment, and shame. And everyone wonders why the male suicide rate is what it is? He never said anything. Yeah, because when it comes down to it, no one really freaking cares. You are disposable. Found this in a thread almost a year ago and I thought it was relevant to this topic. Not my post, but a credit to you Daddy Zero for the excellent post. That there is social pressure that makes our worth as men equivalent to how much we can provide, mostly financially, but physically and emotionally as well. It's tasking and critical for us, and it often gets overlooked or unnoticed. It often gets overlooked or unnoticed. I'll echo this and say it almost always does. I'm a hospice worker. I often have men who were once providers struggle very hard with their dying process because they were so active and so involved in their family's life, but also ill-equipped emotionally to deal with change because society never gave them the tools. This stuff has lifetime negative effects. In the absence of other information, you're considered a threat. If you see a guy walking towards you at night, the first thought is that they might try to mug, fight, rape, whatever you. If a woman comes up to you at night, first thought is that she wants some help, directions. Being a male victim of sex abuse freaking sucks. I don't doubt that it's hard for women. They must have their own challenges with this. But man, it feels like no one in the world understands sometimes. I did a research project in college and even Rain says that approximately 38% of rape victims are male. I get that that's not as many as women, duh, but it feels like that gets overlooked immensely. Being a provider is huge. When two men meet for the first time, it is likely that the first thing said is what do you do for a living? It's causal conversion, but if you've just been laid off or fired, this is the last situation you want to be in. I'm not sure that a lot of women realize how much of our mood overall attitude is tied to how we are doing financially at every moment. Men and Child Protective Services. While child welfare is important, my childhood along with my siblings had to deal with incompetent child protective services who believed my mother was a good parent and was just going through a tough time. They wanted me and siblings to go live in a burned house with our abusive stepfather, thinking everything would work out. My real dad refused and said if he had to he would have taken them to court and fought for me if they made me step in that house. They relented and let me live with my dad doing checks. As my dad told me in recent years, they were uncomfortable with a single father raising a son and gave preferential treatment to my mother even though she couldn't handle it. What I'm trying to say is these services trying to protect kids give priority of the mother even if they are incapable of caring for their children. It does seem to be changing, but this really shouldn't be an issue. Who is the better parent to raise their kids if things go wrong? Mum, dad, or other? Getting a girl. As a man, we are expected to do the first move and pretty much all the work in getting a girl. This can be quite hard if you are uncomfortable making the first move. Girls who feel the same don't really have the same problem since guys still ask them out. But being a guy and introverted makes it really hard. Plus, you cannot ever be seen to be bothering her. You must always know whether she wants a simple compliment or more and whether she wants it from you or someone else. Otherwise you're the freaking weirdo loser goblin thing living in a basement somewhere. Keeping your dong not too hard and not too soft for presentation. If a chick asks a man to whip it out, we may not want to because it isn't presentable. Facts. I suffer from depression. I have absolutely no one to share it with. I am even too afraid to share this with my dad or my brother. As a single dude, you're kind of just expected to tough it out. You look weak if you can't. I'm not blaming society for it or anything like that. It just makes sense logically. Why would a woman date a dude with problems over a dude without? Why would an employer hire a man with issues over one who doesn't have any? I guess it seems that with women, they are kind of expected to be more emotional, so I just smoke weed every day and tough it out. The pressure of always having to initiate certain things in a culture where advancing too soon can get you in a lot of trouble, while at the same time you get labeled a beta for not being overtly aggressive, or not completing if you're alone with a girl. Yeah, the worst part is that most of the time they do get approached, it's by some overly pushy dude. They're not that common, but when it's the same people doing it hundreds of times, almost all women have experienced it a lot. And that makes other men not want to approach, which means the only time they do get approached is by creepy dudes. We're not allowed to express anger or else we'll be labeled as abusive or unstable. Anger is one of the most primal reactions, and it is completely okay to be angry. It's not okay to do bad things out of anger. but it is incredibly manipulative and crappy to tell men they can't be angry or else it's abusive. Maybe this only pertains to my life, but I've been called abusive for getting angry over something. Even though I've never threatened anybody, I've never hit anybody, and I'm typically very rational about my anger. Some people just can't handle it when someone is angry with them. This has happened to me as well. Yelled at a girl who completely deserved it one time and she went onto my Facebook profile and told all my family that I'm abusive and she had to call the cops, which never happened. Those big ego, aggressive, hyper-competitive, workaholic males that many women seem to cite as the toxic reason they don't get ahead in the workplace? We have to compete with those bastards too. Good one. It's very hard for men to talk about being sexually assaulted. They don't want to be seen as pussies or losers for being raped. Defending another person. It's a lot to put someone through. Not all men are designed to fight. In an emergency situation, a man is supposed to defend all females, elderly, children, etc. to the point of giving his life up if he has to. That's a big deal to decide in a split second and to do it for someone you might not even know. Sure, a woman can do this, but what would be said of a big strong man if a small woman died for him to live? We all say we would, as men, die for the greater good. However, I've been there, in that situation. It's not easy to put your life before others. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with approaching women. From a heterosexual man's point of view, if you don't approach a girl to date, you're seen as weak and cowardly, but when you finally do approach a girl, you're viewed as creepy and overbearing, even if you do it respectfully. There is no way to win here. Guys have less societal support than women when it comes to things like mental or psychological issues like depression. Men are seen as tough and godly, so guys are generally told to tough it out or just get over things. People joke about other guys when they speak out or seek out help, and due to our desire to not be ostracized by friends and family, we bottle everything up with no outlet to release our emotions. It's horrifying to see just how stupid people can be when it comes to who deserves what, when things like depression, anxiety and stress affects every human being regardless of gender. How to get girls to notice you. I'm trying everything but girls just don't notice me. I mean, man, it'd be nice to get a freaking compliment every once in a while. I compliment people on their looks. Not getting compliments is definitely a thing, especially on your looks. A girl complimented me about a year ago and I still remember that. To make it clear, the meaning of this post is absolutely not to discourage women or fight for some men's right thing. My friend passed away at the age of 21 due to suicide, and it made think about all the usual stuff you know. Why did he do it? What made him feel so bad about himself that he felt the only way to cure it was to end his life? This post is for me to get some answers about what the common male redditor is going through. I'm sorry for your loss. Losing friends is always tough, but suicide is an unequivocal devastation. My best friend's little brother, and the closest I'll ever get to having a little brother, killed himself almost 10 years ago, and I honestly can say I think of him every day. The pressure to be friendly while not being seen as creepy. I have to be friendly but not too friendly, and will never, ever compliment a woman for fear I will be seen as some creepy perv. I just have to tell my wife, she looks nice today, or her hair looks great, and then my wife can say the compliment. It really is a shame. Society has kinda made it so if a guy compliments a woman he must be hitting on her, and if he's married or unattractive to the complimentee, he's a pervert. This was a big issue in one relationship of mine. I couldn't say anything positive about anyone outside her. I felt in a cage. There's been a time or two in me and my so's life where I had absolutely no idea how we were gonna pay the bills, and it was my responsibility to do so. Luckily we came out of it okay, but it was stressful for sure. There is something cold and lonely about masculinity. People just don't compliment men. They don't do nice things for them, because we're not expected to want it. I can count all of the genuine compliments I've gotten. Not from family, girlfriend, not flirting, not prompted by something else, on my hand, and every one of them elated me at the time. And don't get me wrong, I know that the compliments women get is often perverted into catcalling and harassment, and that's worse than anything I've had to deal with as a guy, but it still sucks. Honestly, I was always curious if it was a guy thing or if women do it as well. Distancing oneself from and denying oneself the ability to emote negatively. Such negative crap has happened to me and had been said to me. I think in the moments they've happened, I just shut down. I kind of turn off. I don't dwell on it. I don't feel sad about it. I just grow numb to it and take the time to let it go. I mean, sometimes it's led to some incredibly frustrating situations and positions. I don't think I'd like to react any other way, though. The negativity that follows from reacting negatively is very overwhelming and has never improved my lot in the given situations. Taking time to absorb the moment and the negativity is definitely not as gratifying as responding negatively or aggressively. And there are definitely a few guys that do that, but quite a few more guys I've spoken to say they have to suck it up, too. I do the same the most of the time. Most of the time I feel like there is no point in arguing and I try to stay as calm as possible when crap happens or somebody does say something to me. The only thing I'm afraid of is that one day, the wrong person will say or do the wrong thing and I completely lose it. The pressure of knowing that I could literally become worthless and treated as an undesirable because I'll lose my job. Men have no meaning in who they are, only what they produce. If they don't produce something then they literally should just die. That's basically what men are made to feel like. It would be easier to list the male problems that women would understand. Not that women can't understand what men go through, just that any time a man encounters struggles, in media or otherwise, you can count on it being painted as a failure on his part, not a challenge he needs help overcoming, with media basically portraying all male problems as stemming from a magical lack of manliness, and the only truly manly things being aggression and destruction. I'd say it's hard for men to grasp men's problems, let alone women. The societal pressure to have a female partner of some sort. I'm 18 years old and still and not having had any kind of partner in 4 years of high school made me extremely depressed. I felt like I wasn't good enough for any girls and that girls were a verification of how successful you were. If you go from girlfriend to girlfriend you're obliviously desirable, right? It just sucks to have the expectation of being an alpha male and hooking up with Tinder dates the first time you meet them. That's gross. But I get teased by most guys about how I don't surround myself with at least 1 or 2 girls because I just haven't found any I like enough to want to be around. If it makes you feel any better, my Grammy always says, it's a long race. Being expected to be like all the guys you see in movies and on TV, jacked to heck and back and cold and emotionless when it comes to your own well-being. You need to get a girlfriend, no experience so we don't know what to do, try too hard or go about it wrong and end up creeping her out, get rejected and feel bad, regress into solitude, you need to get a girlfriend. Continue the cycle indefinitely. It's hard being expected to start relationships with someone who may not be open to starting one. The vulnerability is immense but no one cares when men feel vulnerable. Man, the no experience thing is so relatable. I was not my first girlfriend's first boyfriend. She had dated a couple other guys before me, so she kinda knew what she was doing. I, on the other hand, had absolutely no idea how to make anything happen between us. And yet, she still expected me to always initiate everything. When a man asks for help he needs to swallow whatever pride he has left, pride and confidence being the exact thing he is looking for. If you don't make the first move you will be alone for the rest of your life. So if you're nervous wreck better get used to enjoying time on your own. I have clinical depression and extreme OCD and I really do feel like the world doesn't understand sometimes. It is usually very hard to talk about these things with anyone and I'm sure a lot of other men feel the same way. I've mentioned it before to people and they just can't grasp the idea that I could have such issues and that I should be thankful and happy for being healthy. Being mentally unstable is not healthy and many people do not understand that, especially when a man shares that they don't feel like they're quite there mentally. Trying to explain my OCD to anyone is just about the hardest task I've ever been faced with. Imagine walking down a sidewalk at dusk with 2 arms full of groceries, and when women see you coming, they cross the street. If you come up behind them because you have longer legs and walk faster, they pretend to be on a phone call. You know because the screen didn't light up. You know you have to pass them loudly and quickly so they don't think you're trying to attack them. Even though statistically, you're more likely to be mugged than she is. You've never even gotten close to attacking someone, even in defense, and you're clearly in no position to attack anyone even if you wanted to. We're not monsters, and it hurts to be treated like one. I intentionally scuff my feet along the ground a few times to make a noise if it looks like a woman in front of me hasn't noticed I'm there. Not because I'd ever do anything, but because I know they'll assume I would and I was sneaking up on them. I'm a woman, but I figure I can come here to have something explained to me. Is it true that we preach and parade about the strong, independent woman who don't need no man, but never try to preach the strong, independent man who don't need no woman? Because if that's true, then that's weird. It's 100% true. I can never talk about my problems or that I feel bad. Every time I tried to explain myself to a female, all I got was man up and the usual comment about how I don't know pain because I don't have a period every month. The sheer fact that I don't have a period means I can never have problems or feel bad. It's gotten to the point I just don't talk about my problems or if I'm in pain with women. Unless of course I want to feel worse. I do talk about it with my guy friends and they are there for me. At least I have someone to talk to and express myself. A lot of guys out there don't. They end up bottling all that pain up until eventually they explode, and it's never in a good positive way. After 35 years of being expected to man up, be the rock everyone else can grab onto, and controlling my emotions, while women are allowed to express them freely and sometimes unreasonably, I don't know if I can really feel things anymore. They are there, but it's like they're siloed or firewalled somewhere else. It's like I can see them in abstraction, but I'm unable to experience them. Kinda like standing next to a lake and looking at the water, reading the temperature on a thermometer but not jumping in. It's always been expected of me, as a man, that I'm the calm one, the one who keeps everyone together. Anytime I've actually opened up, I was met with admonishment, or disgust. Despite the SOS in my life always asking me to open up, whenever I have they end up complaining about having to hear me rant, or noting being able to carry both of our weight, or just body language reactions that indicate they respect me less. So I, and most other men like me, just shut it off. But you can't just shut off half of your emotions and keep the good ones going. I feel like a sociopath now, running through life with fake smiles and positivity, just projecting what everyone expects of me, not feeling bad, not feeling good, not feeling empty, just not really feeling. I have some many great things in my life, great wife, amazing kids, and interesting job, but I don't feel like I'm able to enjoy any of it. The love I have for my wife and kids is about the only thing that barely makes it through, and it feels so good. But I feel like I'm only scratching the surface of it, and it's only able to make it through in flashes. Sometimes I wish I could just have an emotional breakdown, start crying and screaming and shouting, but I quite literally don't know how to let it out. I could scream and force tears, but I wouldn't be accessing those emotions, just going through the actions. This is the silent desperation of men. This is the most real, open and personal thing I have ever posted on the internet, and used my all to do it. Being a certain height. This is something that can't be fixed hitting the gym, or at all really, unless you do that crazy surgery where you break your fricking legs and the bone is supposed to grow back over a split. You could try hormonal therapy, but if you don't have the money, insurance, pediatric approval, you're fricked. You also have a limited window to possibly try and treat this, so it's not like cosmetic surgery you can get for your jaw or dong when you become a millionaire. Once your growth plates close around adulthood, you can't even take HGH to try and gain some height. This desire to feel tall goes beyond superficial stigma. It has to do with general laws of attraction that are pretty aligned with having respect as well. Like it or not, we still have much of the same mating instincts as our primitive ancestors had many hundreds of years ago. Women want to be with someone they feel can protect them, and, generally speaking, that means they look for someone who's bigger than them, strong or tall or both. It's one of the few things you never see women complain about being an unfair standard of attraction, but it sorely is. There's an entire class of people that, if not fricked, at least have much more of a severe, irreversible limitation on the kinds of women they can get because of their vertical length. Your height largely boils down to genetics on top of being virtually not treatable, and I don't think any women really appreciate that. I know no one wants to say it and pretend that they're forward thinkers. Even if they say that they don't care what other people think, women don't typically want to look down on their men, and men don't want to be looked down on in general. Way back in college, a girl said to me that her mother told her she could never love any man shorter than her. The expectations women have for men in terms of physical appearance. Firstly, allow me to acknowledge that I might be wrong, and that there are probably millions of women not like this. However, speaking from experience, I see that women expect and desire men with bodies that aren't just fit but also built, with high definition in muscles. I've seen this in women of all levels of attractiveness, and it seems rather unfair. To be clear, I don't hate women. I think it's perfectly natural to want an extremely attractive partner, but I feel like women tend to have unrealistic expectations in terms of who they date. For example, I'm sure most men wouldn't hesitate to be in a relationship with any actress or model, but they know that said actress or model is entirely out of their league, so they lower their expectations to whatever degree of attractiveness they believe they're at. Additionally, while being slim and healthy is still manageable if you put in a decent amount of effort in balancing calories and watching your nutrition, being able to achieve what's commonly known as the warrior body and maintain it is an entirely different thing. I'm working towards it now, and it seems near impossible unless you've been an athlete since a certain age, you have loads of free time on your hands, or unless your job requires you to have that sort of fitness body image. Again, I understand where girls with this mentality are coming from. Just please be realistic in what you'd consider acceptable dating material, and this applies to both genders. I'm focusing on females cause that's what the question asked about. TLDR. I don't think women realize how high their expectations are for men in terms of who they'd consider dating material, but there are obviously exceptions and sometimes guys do the same too. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.